Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the SimSN podcast, the show where I ask some of my favorite questions to some of your favorite people. We're coming to you a bit late this week, but we're able to put something together thanks to the arrival of our good friend Newkbomb, also our reigning GM of the year. Welcome back to the show, man.
Thanks for having me. Um, I'm here even if I can't be seen, and I will not end up behind you at the end of the show. Don't worry about that.
I appreciate that. Um, we are almost ready to start the 2027 regular season. Last week, the preseason comes out a couple days. I don't know how you're feeling. I feel like expectations maybe have never been higher for the Chiefs entering this season.
To my knowledge, yeah, we've had. I mean, last season we were hopeful, but there wasn't a lot of expectation given David Chop's history before or as a Raven. So yeah, no, there's definitely more expectation. The AFC looks more wide open now after the Broncos did all of the things that they did. Um, so we'll see what happens with it. Um, we don't have the weight of being the big favorite. That's Miami's, but the weight of expectations for sure on them to win. But we've definitely pushed some pieces to go all in this year too.
hmm Yeah, you've got not only top QB, now you've got top receiver, you've got a top defensive end now in Chad Bruce, and some other top strong safety in Jan Miller, and a couple of other developing pieces as well. I love your tight end, Van Slyke. He's looked great for you. Um, yeah, I've really assembled a lot of really exciting pieces over the last couple of years.
Yeah, we even got we got a star corner in DeLuna, a
hmm
star tackle in um Therio. I don't know how to say his name, but yeah, I think the team building philosophy has been like getting star players at key positions and then filling in solid players around them, and if possible, even trying to develop young guys at the same time. Not necessarily the Denver model of all get the highest overall player at every single position, but get some key stars and then build around them with good players or good young players to kind of keep our window open for a longer time. But that'll also depend on the QB position, which is a little bit uncertain looking into the future now that Chop is on the decline,
hmm
attribute wise at least.
Yeah. It's so interesting because I was looking at his history today, and like if you just looked at his stat page in a vacuum, like his TD interception ratio got better. He threw for more yards, but like it doesn't really capture. Like it feels like he played so differently at Baltimore versus at Kansas City, and that's even before factoring in like the win percentage that the QB wins. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm curious what your take on that is because you know the 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 feel of it was very different than the way it appeared when you just look at the stat page.
Yeah, I think there's a couple factors. He hasn't had a positive touchdown to interception ratio, maybe one, but like this was his best ratio for a while. So even though like the yards and the completion percentage were similar, he was turning it over less. And the thing that we did too with him is that in previous years he threw similar and had a similar number of attempts. For the 3 years before we had him, he got injured, so it was in like 11 or 12 games, and he threw the same number of attempts versus the full 17. So
Mm,
we were asking him to pass less um, and run more, and I think that balance allowed us to be a more effective offense. And even though he threw for the same or had a similar number of attempts, it was actually I think his career high in passing yards. So
hmm
he was completing similar number of passes, throwing it maybe a similar number of interceptions, slightly more touchdowns, but he was more effective. And that was even obviously getting Elswick and helped a lot mid-season. But even before that, we were seeing that with Michael Walker and King Angelis that were like solid guys, but not any like superstar pass catcher in the first half of the season. So just being in a more balanced offense, I think, allowed him to just be more dynamic, even if it didn't, he didn't turn into a Dean Hammond level like efficient pocket passer, but he just was able to be more effective, kind of in the margins, and yeah, just be more a little bit explosive, even if he's completing a similar number of passes and throwing 20-ish interceptions.
yeah. Where do you, and you can go IRL or Sim or both, where do you stand on QB wins as a metric. I know it's not something we officially track, but I know people talk about. There's some people that really believe in that as a stat, and then some people that say wins belong with pitchers and has no business in football.
I mean, I think it matters to the extent that like a guy who can't win at all, like if you're never making the playoffs versus a guy that's winning 15 games a year, like that's significant. Like if you can actually lead your team well, I think getting into the nitty gritty, I mean, like, oh, David Chop had, 13 wins last year, but Peter London had 14 wins, and so that way must mean that Peter London is better, for example. Maybe not the best comparison, but like getting that granular with it, I don't know if it says a lot because in football, the quarterback has the biggest impact, but there's so much that happens in one single game
Mm-hmm.
that is like kind of complete variance that a win doesn't fully capture it. But a quarterback that struggles to win big picture, I think that does matter. Like, hey, you're playing well, but your team isn't like winning in general. You're not able to make the playoffs, or you're not getting over the hump. I think of like, Christian Sinnott, although his numbers like stats haven't been great either, but that's more of like okay, like there's not something quite right there, even though he's got the talent and he's been thrown for a lot of yards, but not quite actually getting the wins, like making the playoffs, that kind of push.
Yeah.
That's where I see it more as the fair way to judge it with the quarterback.
And in the sim, you kind of have an additional, very discrete metric, which is overall. Like we have
Hmm.
the actual number to say this, player seems like they should be good, compared to what they do. Whereas obviously in real life it's more eye test and it's a combination of all the other factors built in. But in this case, we do have a single like this is the number we think you should be compared to everything else that goes on in the field. And
Yeah,
it's funny. So I was debating whether or not to name him specifically, but Sinnock was the other one who came to mind immediately. Of high overall, flashes here and there, but hasn't been able to get the Vikings kind of where they want to be.
yeah. I mean, you compare, he's basically like the same overall, basically the same attributes are comparable to Morrison in Washington.
Hmm.
Obviously, Morrison's got a better team around him, but like there's a huge difference in the numbers. If it was a small difference, you could be like, yeah, Morrison's got better defense, better pass catchers, but he's way outperformed Cynic. And so that comes down to like, okay, that's not just the environment. Then if there's a huge difference, even when the talent is on paper and we have the tangible proof for that in the numbers, so
Mm-hmm.
similar. So there's more to it than yeah, just obviously Washington having a better team in general, at least over the last few years.
Yeah.
Although they're starting to decline a little bit, and the Vikings got blank now, and some other pieces that are looking pretty good.
Yeah. So yeah, on that note, we talk about the decline of some of our stalwarts. We talk about teams like Minnesota and Seattle, looking for their first playoffs. Kansas City maybe looking for your first division crown. Um, any other storylines or any other big firsts or big shifts of the seesaw that you're looking forward to maybe seeing this season?
Yeah, there's definitely some things I'm thinking about. There's actually some media that I was thinking about writing that was kind of like big questions that'll shape the season, but I don't know if I've got a lot of other media that's kind of cooking in the background right now. So that felt like just a perfect kind of podcast topic list instead of using it as written media. So the number one question that I wrote down is like, are we finally going to get a new AFC champion?
Mm.
Not only have these Denver dominated the West, I think the Raiders took one division title off them.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was even in the season they won the Sim Bowl too, which is funny. Maybe not for sure, but I
I
think
think
that
you're
might have
right.
been.
I think you're right. Yeah.
So maybe Alex needs to go back to keeping Denver as a wild card team. That's their secret sauce to winning. But anyway, like they've won the AFC every year, regardless of the division too. And so obviously Miami has positioned themselves to be the team ready to take over now that Denver has took a step back. But like Denver's got like they're still run by Alex, and they got the same people there. And obviously they don't have the top level stars, but there's some good players there. And we've seen teams that don't necessarily have all the talent on paper perform well, and Tennessee being the most obvious example from last year. But
Mm-hmm.
um, what would we? I mean, we would be very frustrated, but like, would it be that surprising if Alex finds a way to take Denver to the playoffs, and once you're in the playoffs, you just got to win a couple games.
Mm-hmm.
So is this finally the year though that they that someone else takes the AFC. Obviously, Miami's the huge favorite, but in Kansas City, we've put together a pretty solid team here. We've got the Chargers that are looking pretty stacked too, and I think those are the big three in the AFC. And then there's a handful of teams that I think will be competitive, but maybe have a couple more flaws or weaknesses
Mm-hmm.
than those top three. But yeah, the AFC for sure is going to be interesting because the NFC has kind of the handful of dominant teams, but it's been a little bit more of a rotation in terms of who's represented them. So yeah, that's what it's all going to come down to. Can someone finally win the AFC besides Denver?
Yeah, and I feel the same way about the NFC East, where Washington hasn't had as much success in the playoffs, but has had, I think, the division championship every year. Um, um, so yeah, I'm looking at, or sorry, in the NFC East with Washington, compared to maybe Dallas now they have Peter London. The West is interesting too with Seattle again, still on the come up, and then the Rams. On paper, not being the same team that they were, but like I, bet against the Rams at your own at your own risk. Um, the North just looks crazy competitive. Green Bay and Detroit both look excellent, but like Minnesota and Chicago can't be counted out either. So that whole division looks like a buzzsaw. So all those games against each other could really swing things either way. Um, yeah, yeah, it's interesting, and I think especially in like the NFC, I think we had four repeat division champions last year. I think everyone repeated. So there's been a bit of a monolith at the top. As much as those top four teams were close to each other, they've kind of been the dominant ones. And every year it's like, is this the year that someone new breaks through? Um, so will be interesting to see. Um,
Mhm.
and then AF, yeah, I don't know
Yeah,
if we're getting a new. Well, sorry, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, and well, it seems like the Panthers probably have the NFC South locked up for this year, considering none of the other teams are
That one
that
seems fairly
competitive.
safe.
But the other three, I think, could definitely go, and they're all interesting because there's all on some key teams at least quarterback changes. You mentioned obviously Peter London in Dallas, which like they went from Fuentes, who's like a game manager, field general, to like Peter London, who's been like the superstar field general. Memes aside of like performance in the big game, but he's played well. Then we have obviously Seattle moving on from West, which in theory should be a downgrade, but he didn't really play well
Mm-hmm.
there either. As we think of another quarterback that's underperformed there, the ratings and even yeah, there's been no change quarterback changes in the North, but like well, there might be, I guess, Green Bay with Garibay declining, like maybe
Hmm.
Everett's technically is Everett his name, I think, is higher overall there now. So like maybe they
Ooh,
just go with it.
interesting.
Roll with Everett, who looked good as backup last year. Um, Plus Chicago technically has Gerald Lewis, but they're like on the precipice of potentially being ready to head, dive into a rebuild. So we'll see where they go with it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even in the AFC, I think there's similar things like Jacksonville's got both Rivera and Howard still. Um, there's a lot of teams that would start either of those guys. Yeah, especially in the North is really interesting because I think since he's full in tank mode and on their knees begging for Mr. Richards. Um, the other three, though, all have young quarterbacks and are should be interesting and fairly competitive because Pittsburgh it dealt some of their vets, so I think their talent they don't necessarily aren't necessarily like the clear cut favorites in that division now for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know how seriously to take Smackums when he says he's not sold on Robert Morris as the starter. Um, a little bit of buyer's remorse there, maybe, uh, after the extension they gave him last year. Um, but we will see. Sorry, I just couldn't resist the pun. No, another team I think poised for a couple of years, Detroit, and I gotta say I'm almost disappointed that the Kansas City and Lions game was a preseason game because like put that in the regular season and that's like a top 10 all time game I think with like five lead changes in the final quarter, all touchdowns. Um, Yeah, you guys are both like in mid-season form, playing all your starters. That was a really fun game to watch.
Yeah, for sure. I think Detroit is like under the radar, like as good as maybe Miami's like a slight tick above in terms of just the absolute studs they've got up and down the roster. But like they're right in the mix, I think, with us, Dallas, Carolina, the Chargers. Like they've got a really good team.
Yeah.
Um, and especially like the difference between us and them is like we've got, like I said, kind of a few stars. Their offense doesn't necessarily have like a superstar, although I'm biased. I think Tremaine Craig is a superstar running back
Mm.
as in his second year already. Potentially maybe the second best back in the league, but uh, they just have like solid pieces across the board with so there's not really a superstar, but like they don't really have any weaknesses on offense, and their defense is pretty stacked. They're I know our game turned into a blowout. I think that's partially because of the talent we both have on offense, but they're going to be tough to score on for most teams that don't have a superstar offense.
Mm.
So I think that's going to be their calling card this season. And their offense is just working like they can run the ball. Their quarterback doesn't make Hansen doesn't make mistakes. They've got a solid receiving core, good O line, especially now that Bordovic got released and got onto a more reasonable contract. Um, yeah, they're real good. I think they're the best team that no one has really talked about this offseason. That one the trade they made with the Steelers was maybe one of the most impactful offseason moves.
Mm.
Or Leatherman, is that the guy's name? The defensive
Yeah.
end that's like 90, 91 overall.
Yeah.
That's like, I mean, obviously we traded for Bruce and he's 996 or whatever. So that's, maybe the highest overall player that changed teams. But in the NFC, that's probably the most impactful offseason move for sure.
Yeah.
I would say. So Detroit is, I have them circled as a team to for sure watch. They beat the Panthers last year in the playoffs, and then they added more talent. A lot of their best players got better, especially Tremaine Craig, their starting running back, who went like +5,
Yeah.
and is now not a rookie. Like has some more experience in the pros. I'm obviously I love Craig. He's my as his former college coach, but
And
he's really good.
they drafted like incredibly well last 2 years too. So yeah, and it's interesting because on the offensive side in the NFC, you think of like the Carolinas and the LA Rams, the big passing teams, that really light up that side of it. But Detroit is just, as you said, they're super efficient, they're balanced, they're hard to stop, they don't make mistakes. And that's what they did with Carolina. It was just they held the ball for long drives. Every drive was at least some score, and they had 40 minutes of time of possession, and they just ground them down, and didn't give many opportunities. Um, which is not an offense we see as much of, at least among the top echelons of the league.
Mhm. Yeah, I like that balanced approach. I think it's easy in the sim to want to lean into like go all in on passing, go all in on running, or at least like a certain style,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's not purely running, but like kind of that philosophy of running it. But I think because then you can get all the scheme bonuses and stack all that. But I think like a balanced scheme like that is just harder to stop because there's no like one button you can push in game planning, like, oh, we're just going to max out pass defense. And if we get lucky and get the 6 interception Philip Avila game, then then we can probably win against the Rams. If you get the 6 touchdowns and 2 interception or 1 interception game, then you probably lost. But like, you can just max out your pass defense. You can, focus play the long pass and stuff like that. Versus, like the Lions is a bit more balanced. It's like, what do you set that slider at? Like you go 100% pass, then Craig is going to run it up there. Especially, I think their O line is mainly run blockers too, so they'll just run it down your throat. You try to mid 50-50, and then like you don't have control over when they get called. So then it's like, shoot, now it's 50-50. They're doing pass defense, but they're running it down. That's now they switch to run defense and they call a pass play. So that's I think it's a little bit harder to build that way because you don't necessarily it takes a little more patience and you don't see the huge explosive returns from stacking all those scheme bonuses. But I think it's a say an approach that like is a good long-term approach and like wins championships. Like that's what Denver did well, is that they didn't index all in one thing, and they could run it, they could pass it. Peter London, wasn't throwing a lot of interceptions, and also eventually turned into a runner himself.
Hmm.
I think that was Denver's secret sauce to being so successful these last 5 seasons. So I think Detroit's kind of replicating that in the NFC now, with
Yeah.
maybe the not as much top end talent, but like still really good talent.
Yeah, I think in college it's a little bit easier to get away with. Was it Sage? They call it like the punch play, kind of like your
Hmm.
button that you hit consistently, and then maybe you have one other play that is designed to counter whatever their defense is to your punch play. Um, but then you get into issues of balance, and as things change or as things move around, it's like what happens when the one thing I do isn't as powerful as it was. Um, so yeah, versatility is tough, but it's certainly effective. um, and I love that. I love seeing the different ways that teams are built. Teams that are heavy offense, defense, built heavy on schemes or built big on talent, punch plays versus variety. Um, the different triangle advantages of scheme versus scheme as people try out or as people say, oh, a lot of people run pistol, so I'm going to switch to this, and seeing that kind of slow seismic shift over the seasons is fun too. Especially as a more GM minded person, like there's the coaching week to week, but then there's like the year to year changes of, oh, I see this scheme is real popular, and I want to kind of shift over to doing something to counter that. Um, the bigger but longer term moves are fun to see throughout the league.
Yeah, I definitely feel that as a GM. Like I prefer to build it in a way where it's like we have a system that like isn't like we're not reacting to what other people are doing. So, we're in like the 4-man spread stopper, but we're not doing it to counter the pistol teams and the air raid teams. We're doing it because I think like having a bunch of sorry, getting personnel in the field that can defend the pass, but then having front seven players that are good at stopping the run just gives us a numbers advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And so it doesn't matter to me if I mean, maybe if we count, if the league turns into everyone running flexbone and wishbone, I'll reconsider this. But like, as long as teams are stay somewhat balanced, don't go full power. Like I think having just a scheme that's kind of meta, um, independent of what the meta is kind of what I'm aiming for. And just getting really good players. And once you get to the top tier, you look at Elswick and Bruce, like sure, Fabris is like a speed rusher, but he's 96 overall. Like he's got 95 plus run defense or whatever it is too. Like he's not just a pass rusher
Mm-hmm.
at that point. So the goal is to hopefully develop players that aren't just specialists in our scheme that only work against a certain thing, but we have a more balanced approach that can kind of be a catch-all and hopefully develop enough talent and acquire enough talent. I'm not against making trades, as the league I'm sure has found out. Um, I try to make too many trades, but yeah, just that's kind of how I look at building the team, both for now and into the future. My goal is to have a roster laid out where we're not just, especially right now in a winning window, we're not like just maximizing our talent right now, but that way in 2 years or whatever, when Chop's retired or however many years it'll be, he'll at least be regressing to a point in a couple of years where he might not be playable, but we're not just completely screwed at that point. Like maybe we'll have to take a step back if the quarterback isn't as elite, but
Mm-hmm.
um, I'm hoping for just more sustained success to a certain extent. Obviously, some windows, some years like right now is when we're really pushing for winning the whole thing. But I'm not a go all in for 2 years to win as much as possible and then go all the way back out. Like I want to be just sustained success is what I'm aiming for as a GM, as a team builder. Um, we'll see how that works.
Yeah.
Being in year 2 now.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch the long term plans, and a lot of people, I think they have either they have a specific timing in mind for where they're going, or maybe it's just that they like to develop players. But we see teams. I'm always surprised that I see free agents, and I'm like, oh, teams are going to spend big, teams are going to get these guys, and then they really don't. And I understand that guys are 29, 30, like you're not going to get their peak for very long, but it does sometimes surprise me that you know, you say, "Oh, I got this guy. He's going to be a 75 in 2 years." And it's like, right, but if you have the money for a guy who's that good, not like I understand wanting to develop a player, but I'm sometimes surprised that teams don't take bigger dips in free agency to at least get a guy now because they'd rather develop their guy for the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I think like what I mean, I have only been in the sim for a couple of years, but like tracking progressions and stuff, like unless either A, it's like you're really building like for long term in the future, or they have like huge potential and you want to maximize their progressions as much as possible. Like guys are going to go like +3, maybe even +4 if they have decent potential, even if they don't see the field a ton.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd rather like have players on the field right now that are either like veterans in their prime in their last couple of years, or guys like at least approaching that, that gets to like 75, 80, that kind of range,
Mm-hmm.
with guys behind them that are developing, getting maybe some snaps in special teams or rotating in or whatever it is, ready for, good enough to be step in if there's an injury too. But developing enough that by the time they're, 25, 26, then they can step up and start. Um, Instead of being like, oh, well, he's 24 now and he's going to be our answer, so let's play him now and get as much playing time as possible. I think they'll develop in the sim at least, regardless of if they play starter snaps or not.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe extra +5s instead of +4s will add up over time, but I'm content to get +3s and +4s for my young guys. That will be still plenty good in the future.
Yeah.
And the ones that are really good will play younger. I've got
Mm-hmm.
the second year Tyler Merrigoss. He's already 70 overall, run stopping safety. Like he'll mix in as like our third safety in the kind of like heavy, dime packages that our defense runs and stuff. But like, we're not going to rush start him as our number one safety. We could have let Jan Miller walk, but I'm not going to let an 80+ safety walk when we at least have the money to tag him for 1 year while this guy develops a little bit more, and then hopefully next year he gets to the mid 70s and can be comfortable running him out there as a starter.
Yeah.
Unless there's another opportunity find. I have plans for the future, but then as guys get posted to the block or free agents become available and we have money available, this is the plan and we're sticking to it no matter what happens. Like if the right guy becomes available, I'm gonna try to snap him up. I did not go into the offseason targeting Chad Bruce, but then he became available, and the price was what we were willing to pay. 1 first, I felt like was more than fair for potentially the best edge rusher in the league, like attribute wise. He's on an expiring contract. That's the one downside. So we'll have to see if we maybe tag him or extend him. What happens with that? But yeah, he became available. It was a reasonable price for us to acquire him, and so then we snapped him up because we could use him.
Yeah, makes sense to me. I was thinking about another point as far as like developing players, which is that like, the guys when they're young and especially on rookie deals are cheaper, but then if maybe you get them for one cheap year when they finally play, but then they hit 25, 26 and they want that veteran contract anyway. So yeah, timing and knowing when someone's, when you're going to get the cheap years, when you're going to get the best play years, and how you balance that is a part of it too. Or like you say with the veteran guys, knowing, when they're going to expire and what your options are of, can I keep this guy for a year? Do I have to keep him for 3 years and watch him decline? Am I going to let him go? And, maybe get a comp pick next season for him. Trying to see that whole long-term plan and all the options available.
Yeah, I think the young players on rookie contracts, it is valuable obviously to have a contributor, and like, when you hit the jackpot with someone like a Blake LaFell or an RTM, like huge deal to have a starter level guy on a rookie contract for like that is actually the quality of a starter for like at least 3 seasons, 4 seasons, depending on if your option potentially stuck. But I think like ultimately, if you're able to draft and develop the players, you can get extensions where even if we adjust kind of how things work, I know it's been talked about a little bit. This has been some conversations with the current extension system, but like still extending players is usually more cost effective than like signing them in free agency and stuff. And so even if you don't maximize the rookie contract, having them develop on that rookie contract is still valuable to like be able to extend them on their second contract. And especially because you can control the timing with first year picks, like depending on their age for when that contract ends, whether you want to use the 5th year option or not, how long you make that second contract. If you max out the 5 years to kind of end ended around their age 30 season. You could even, depending on I've been wrestling with shooting for, we don't really have any rookie extensions this year, but next year, like going for like a 3-year deal. So that way they're like, they can get a third contract that
Mm-hmm.
like extends further into their prime, depending on the position. I think that's something that would be valuable, especially for quarterback, given their like typically longer prime age window. Is if you just do like the 4 to 5 years plus a full 5-year extension, come up around like 29, 30, depending on draft age and some other factors. But if you give them like a 3-year extension into a 5-year extension,
Mm.
they're instead of that second contract ending when they're 30 and like 80, mid to high 80s, depending on their development, you can extend them when they're like low 80s, maybe save some money for those couple years where they're at their peak.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a rookie quarterback that's really going to come into practice with, but that's something I've wrestled with. Like in the future, if we end up in that situation, like how could we maximize that?
Yeah. Yeah, Browns are definitely trying to do our best to maximize before Anku destroys our bottom line, which he's probably going to do by the end of next season. Um, if I've been working with Tuscan on automating the value generation process. And
Mhm.
there's some fun numbers in there
Yeah.
for young quarterbacks, for guys like RTM and Will Huber, who are just just huge degrees of separation between them and everyone else in their class, and it gets expensive real fast.
Mhm.
I'm excited as a game designer. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be fun. When the values start, hitting 35 or even higher, and it's like, okay, that, you're 10, 12, 14 million a year, your Michael Dysons, your guys like that, seeing what new ceilings we get to and what teams lay out for some of these best stars. um, I think is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, now that we're into like the era of the boom bust in the like drafted players,
Mm-hmm.
I think we're finally going to get to see in a couple of years, depending on when the guys' contracts come up, like our first like true superstar level contracts. Because we've had a lot of the drafted players have just been like the best ones have been like good.
Yeah.
There's not been any like act like you're saying degrees of separation above everyone else their same age. And then all the best players are veterans, especially now at this point that are like 30 plus. So that dampens their value and their ask, understandably. But yeah, like the RTM Will Huber, eventually Blake Fallinger too will
Mm.
like be demanding those superstar level contracts, and it'll be interesting to see how the market is set, and then I'm curious if that trickles down or if it's like a hey, like this only it doesn't really affect too much for the average or above average like corner what RTM gets in free agency, but he'll set the market for the next guy.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, there is a couple guys in the last class that might not quite on our team's level, but like might be close-ish to
Mm-hmm.
his level by the time their deals are done.
Yeah.
And see how future talents respond to those mega superstar deals and how teams build their cap around it when your number one wide receiver is by far the best in the league, but he's eaten up 20% of your cap or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
How does that change how you spend at the quarterback position, especially, and all that kind of stuff? It'll
Yeah.
be interesting to see.
Yeah, and we're seeing log jams too at positions where, you know, guys, not just the best guys, but like pretty good guys are getting the start level contracts. Like I know Miami talked about Jeremy Moreland back and forth for forever about what they were going to do with him, and finally paid him, and then he had a great year. Um, but now it's like, okay, now, anyone in that mid to upper tier of cornerback, is going to talk about 8, 9, $10 million a year. Um, I'm trying to think of other examples. So yeah, you see it both at the high end and then kind of at that mid range, mid 20 or late 20s, first veteran contract level as well. That as those guys get better and start demanding more, they set the field for everyone behind them. Um, so yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, fascinating to watch.
Yeah, I think my floor of like what a not replaceable, like John Moreland's a good player, but like I feel like that's the level of player where like I might extend that kind of thing. I'm more of I'm going to extend like superstars and like really good players. Although I'm sure people are going to disagree that David Cobb is a superstar, but on paper he is. He's the best. He's the best quarterback in our team by far. Like he's played well. He wasn't perfect, but like you know, besides Dean Hammond, Nate showed me a quarterback in the sim that's thrown less than 20 interceptions last year. So, uh, either that or like guys that are in that like coming up after the rookie contract, but like on pace to be really good. Like Advanced like who's already 80 overall at 27, I think he is. Like he could hit 90 overall potentially if he keeps progressing well. And we've had some offensive and defensive linemen at that level. So like I have a higher tolerance for like I'm okay with just picking up a guy a few overalls lower in free agency or off the scrap heap that people turn over on the trade block that might be on cheap contracts, rather than like getting a guy that's a good starter but not a that's not going to that might develop at the very end of his second deal into being one of the best in the league. But if he could progress as well, I'd rather take a little bit of a hit to really save for those top of the line players. Because yeah, I'm trying to maximize the efficiency of our cap, but also have fun with it too. I'm not only trying to min max in the sim.
Right.
I still have fun with it. We offered David Chop 100%. He deserved his asking price. It's definitely not because I didn't fully understand how the system worked when we started for the first time, but yeah, he deserved it though.
I mean, 14 million for a superstar quarterback is not bad, and it's not like you were going to cut him halfway through anyway. So, if it's fully guaranteed,
Yeah,
14 million versus some other number that you pay him anyway, like
yeah. I mean, it would have been not a huge difference, and honestly, like with how good he is, even as he declines, like I think it's fair. It's like yeah, like 80% guaranteed. I want to say. I don't know the exact math on it. It's mostly guaranteed, but not fully.
yeah,
I'm a little worried now that he's regressing that he could retire after this season, which the doubling up the next 2 years of bonus, like we can take it, but that would take me from being able to like really do some good stuff with our cap to being a little bit of a crunch, and also kind of out to sea at the quarterback position.
true.
So I'd prefer if he didn't do that. I think it's more likely that he stays than that he retires, but
Yeah,
I am. It is a possibility, so
that's true.
kind of just got to take it. If he retires in going to the last year, then we were going to pay him that bonus anyways, so it doesn't hurt our cap.
And the thing is, like full bonus contracts, they do inflate the value high, but they are still a way to save money at an absolute level. Again, it does create downstream effects as you inflate value for everybody else, but the idea is it's not supposed to be there's a specific split that's optimal. If you want to pay a guy less in dollars and you're going to keep him and you want to give him the value, like full bonus is a way to go. So and,
yeah, and that's mostly what we did with David Chop. Like if he's on our team, if he's not retiring, we're not going to get rid of him. Like there's not going to be a comparable option out there on the free agent market or in the trade market. So why not pay him? At least mostly bonus, and that's why we did a 3-year deal instead of a 4 or 5-year deal. Because then, like, if you retired going into the deal, then like it wouldn't matter. And so really, there's only one season that wrecks us in terms of retirement cap hitting, because if he retires in the first year, then the contract's voided. If he retires in the third year, we're paying him it anyways. Only in the second year is when it would really hurt us, which is pretty low odds, I think, anyways, for it to specifically be that year. So, we tried to work around it, but still give him a good amount of bonus because we know we're going to be playing him and keeping him if he stays.
Yeah. So, and I'm just, again, furiously taking notes for Dominic Anku in 2 years and whatever that man is going to take us for.
The nice thing about the sim is that we're not paid, nor do we have job security based on how we do in the sim. So there is the competitive element of like, if you help out another person, that might be the guy that beats you. But like, I don't have anything besides my own pride and enjoyment riding on the line. So like, I do like, it's nice to be able to share ideas and team building and philosophies and stuff like that. That like, hey, like, here's what I'm thinking about doing with contracts. I'm not going to share all of my thoughts, but it's kind of fun to share with each other because we're not, our livelihood is not dependent on if our sim team does well or not.
Thank goodness. Um, and yet to cross over a bit, you talked about four man. I think four man spread is what I'm building toward for Ohio State. Now that I've jumped teams,
Mhm.
very excited to work that out. Hope I get some decent strong safeties in the recruitment pool this year. Um, so
Yeah.
I will let you know how that goes. That is an ongoing experiment in Columbus. We're going to try out,
Mhm.
which I have no
Yeah,
experience in. It's
you've
completely different than what I've
got
done
a
everywhere
pretty.
else, which is two gap or multiple. So.
Mhm. Yeah, the Buckeyes are a nice blank slate for you. I've been I did a similar thing with Marshall where like well partially because there was absolutely no linebackers after my first year. So that is the best part about the four man is that good linebackers tough to find in the NFL. You can find decent ones. College, everyone's going after the good linebackers and
Hmm.
recruiting in the portal. They're really hard to get. Um, you can maybe find some, but they're hard to get.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm missing. I kind of built into that too, and I'm kind of, especially but not with safeties not having any scheme bonuses or malices, like having that second safety be a run stopper, because then one of the formation packages that your strong safety two drops down as a linebacker.
Hmm.
So then having a safety that's both decent in coverage, but also is kind of a de facto linebacker is kind of an option to rotate in when you play those run heavy teams instead of coming out with 5 or 6 DBs. Is what I like about the scheme and what I'm kind of testing out both in the NFL and in college. Actually, I brought in a transfer strong safety in my college team from Yale randomly. It was okay for our level in the Sun Belt. So kind of something I'm testing out with that scheme. So I think it could be an effective way to use it.
Hmm. Yeah, I know some people like Sage have been pounding the table on nickel coverage all the time. So that's another voice that I hear in my head. Another way to
Mhm.
keep those five DBs on the field as much as possible.
Yeah, I've been a little bit hesitant to put out a fifth DB against at least formation packages that have like one wide receiver,
Oh,
because then
sure.
it's like, okay, well, what is he doing and
We,
run when they're going to inevitably run the ball there, or who was he going to cover the second tight end? That's probably like a blocking tight end. But yeah, I mean, I think their nickel is strong, um, especially like the four man front nickel, because then you still get four defensive linemen,
hmm.
rushing the passer. If you can get a couple balanced guys in there, or even a run stopper with the malice and take, that can still be an impactful run defender.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm still figuring it out. It's kind of new scheme for me a little bit too, but it's been interesting. Um, yeah, Ohio State should be an interesting experiment for you this year. Now that you've got a completely different environment than
Yeah.
Indiana.
Yeah, we got Mac Howard, and we got a great, decent defensive tackle named Harry Body. That is his genuine name. Um, so
It's great.
hoping they can hold down the fort for us, and that Juan
Mhm.
Lopez can work his magic on the offense because it's kind of just those handful of guys. Um,
Mhm.
but recruiting has always been a strength of mine, so I'm sure we can bring some guys in. And I'm torn between wanting the Hoosiers to not do well without me and wanting to actually see that team take off and be the team I always built it to be. So we will see what Indiana can do this year. Now
Yeah,
that
they got a
Cable is
coach
back.
now, so we'll see. Yeah, we'll see how he does with them. It's so I think I guess it's spring, so maybe we'll take it with a grain of salt. But based on the spring performances, I think it's hilarious to see Juan Lopez. I think that's Ohio State's quarterback name.
Hmm.
Like he's like the complete inversion of Sam Johnson. Like where Sam Johnson has all the pieces around him, has like and is talented,
Hmm.
and yet just cannot make the passing game work. And then Juan Lopez has absolutely nothing around him, but is dragging the team to like being at least a somewhat respectable passing. He's not like been lighting it up, but like
Yeah.
um, I can't imagine. Say if they traded spots, I imagine.
Oh
Uh,
man.
I don't. I can't imagine what Sam Johnson would do in that Ohio State offense.
Even less, I
Maybe
assume.
maybe he needs less expectations. Maybe it's the pressure that gets to him of having guys that are too open and too good. So maybe he's one of those like Brett Favre, where, like he needs to throw it into a really tight window
Hmm.
how he needs to succeed. Um,
Yeah. We had Looney went in the first round, the NFL draft.
mhm.
And next year, I'm betting I think Pilaf could too, and that would be insane if both of his starting receivers were first rounders in some NFL and went on to have fantastic careers and were on the same team for multiple seasons and couldn't get more than 8 wins and like 2,000
Mhm.
passing yards out of Sam Johnson. Like, oh man, what more can you ask for?
Not much. Pilaf is definitely going to be taken highly. He, he's it's honestly not like an amazing wide receiver class. Obviously, Pogue should be really good. The reason that he might fall is less because of this position, but just like I think the class in general will be a little bit better next year. So even if he's similar to Looney, like
Mm-hmm.
there being more good players might just push him down the board a little bit. But he could always, hit a boom and or hit roll, good potential. Or there's plenty of ways, even if he's not necessarily the highest overall receiver going into the draft process to still get taken plenty early.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So he's one of the guys, I don't really it's not really the position we're targeting the most, but I try to keep an eye on like doing some scouting ahead for the next draft, thinking about especially the team trading a lot of picks, like what kind of level of the class is and where we want to keep picks at least because I'm not going to dump all of our picks. I like to have some flexibility there, either to take someone or to even just move around and do different stuff. So he's definitely someone I've got an eye on that I think will be an impactful NFL player. We'll see what how the class ends up shaking out in terms of if he's a first rounder or not. But
Mm-hmm.
regardless, he's still very talented, and it's still very disappointing that Sam Johnson has not been good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to think about. I'm curious what the trade market is going to be like because after going through the 27 draft, seeing kind of the depressed levels of overalls, and then people working that back and being like, oh, well, if you think about when things were triggered and who was in those classes and what they had along the way, it makes sense. Um, so I wonder if that depresses trades at all, because people or maybe increases them because players are our teams are less interested in you know taking a chance on the next draft until we can get. I'm thinking of the timing in my head because I guess Boom Bust was 24, not 67. Um, but yeah, like people had worked out why it made sense that there was a lull and might be another one next year before it takes off again or before it picks up. And I wonder if that changes any expectations or behaviors on the pro side. If people are wary of another year that's like, you've got your top round and then it's kind of, then it drops way off after that.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it could be like a mix of teams that with that bitter taste in their mouth from seeing what the draft looked like this past year, being like, I don't care about picks and freely trading them, especially if they're not picking early with these top guys that'll be in the class. Like, hey, like if the class is gonna be that deep, let me move my picks
Mm-hmm.
for future years or for veterans depending on their situation. But I think there are some teams that are eyeing, especially the guys, because with the early declaration stuff that's changed
Mm-hmm.
now going into next year, like
That's true.
there's a handful of guys that probably would have declared early for this past class as those things happen as the more boom bust and better progressions happen in college that like we're probably at the level where they could have. There's been past discussions about early declarations, but it's been more like, yeah, he could, but like he's not really good enough to like he should probably go back to college. I think of like Brandon Savage going into his senior season. Like he probably didn't need to or declare early. Like he was still even a couple overalls behind Romero as a rookie, obviously being a year younger, but like, guys like Richards and even to some extent Max Howard, but like especially and then on the defensive side, it's Paul Phillips on Penn State and
Mm-hmm.
Edward Martin on LC, another DB. Like those guys probably would have been first round picks if they declared early. Like, like they could have, I guess, busted had that potential and not gone in the first round. Like they had the talent to be in the mix for sure. And now they get another progression. Like I think there's some going to be some serious heavy hitters at the top of this next draft on top of the guys that are becoming draft eligible too. So I think there'll be some teams that see that, especially that want a quarterback, and will be desperately trying to acquire picks. Like the Raiders already have a couple picks in next year's class because of the James Blank trade. The
Mm-hmm.
Colts with that big trade with the Titans, and they have like multiple first, multiple seconds, multiple first the year after that, multiple seconds. I think the year after, like they've got a ton of picks. So I think it's going to be a split between teams giving away picks, being like, class isn't that deep. We're not don't really care about quarterback, and then the teams that are like, hey, like we really want to go all in to get those top couple guys. Um, so I think it'll be a really interesting draft. Uh, for next year for sure. That's definitely a storyline. Is like how picks are moved this season is something I'm keeping an eye on. Like we purposefully traded our 2029 pick, not our 2028 first round pick, because I think specifically first next year might be more valuable with that like top level talent.
Hmm.
Later picks maybe not as valuable like you're saying, but like, I think the 2028 first round is going to be a lot stronger than 2027, and maybe even as better than 2026 too.
Interesting. I like that. I'm gonna keep that in mind. Um, and I love that people are already, as much as I'm looking forward to the season, I love that, people already have in the back of their head, what raves or what ripples might have happened in the past that are causing these big waves now, and what we might see from that. Um,
Mhm.
and that we have just enough information to kind of make those suppositions without, of course, ever knowing for sure. Um, and then, of course, rerolls on potential and boom bust can throw everything out of whack. Um,
Mhm.
like this year, I was ready for a strong wide receiver class, and it just happened that like two of the best prospects rolled terrible potentials,
Mhm.
and ended up going in the middle of that class instead of at the top. Um, and as someone who wasn't in the market for a receiver and hadn't done hadn't done any research, any scouting, it was one surprise after another, seeing all these names that I had never heard of. You know, like Gregory Green becomes a first rounder, and people are like, oh, yep, everyone was going after him. I was like, oh, really? Okay, that's cool.
Yeah,
That's cool. That's great.
when the Packers took him, you teams were in one of two camps. They were like, "Dang, that guy's good. Dang, we wanted him," or "I have never heard that name before in my life." We were in the latter. Like we took Adams last year, had no, we didn't had any need for a receiver, and our whole plan was predicated on moving up for like one of two guys we
Mm,
got ended up getting. So receiver, I did not. I thought about like as a maybe later pick. We ended up not taking one, but yeah, had that was a name that popped up, and I was like, who? And I still don't even think I could tell you what college. Maybe North Texas, actually. I don't know. That's a random pull if I got that right, but I have no idea what college he went to. If it's not North Texas, I don't know why that popped in my head. Which would be funny because aren't
probably
they like the
Green.
mean green too?
Yeah.
Um, so if it's not that, then yeah, I have no idea like where he went to college, what he even did in college. Um, one of those guys, yeah. Who was that? Who? Definitely felt that for him. There's a couple of guys in early. I'm trying to remember who went, but definitely felt that because we were pretty narrow in our scouting focus for this
Hmm.
draft.
Yeah, we were too, and it worked out okay. But man, it makes that first round so dramatic, and if you're because you have no idea if people have seen the players you've seen, but also if they value them the same way you do, because you have half a league's worth of context, um, in any position. I remember thinking going in wide receiver and also defensive end. Defensive end felt, or no, we decided tackle was one that was like we had Mike Penny and Bal Sultana, and we weren't really looking at tackle, but it seemed like it could be a pretty deep class, but of course I didn't know, so I was like the first round could be 4 or 5 or 6 of these guys could go, or maybe it's only two, and everyone else is going to pivot to somebody that I want.
It was a good tackle class. They just
Yeah,
didn't go early for some reason. Is the interesting thing too. Like Teixeira was great. He didn't even get taken the first round. Dunn fell all the way to I think the top of round three. Maybe he
crazy.
wasn't quite a first round talent, but like he's good. Um, yeah. So that's the other interesting part of it too.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it was we were in a similar boat where like um we were only scouting a few different positions and had only like a couple targets, which like you're saying, we just didn't know what the rest of the league saw like in terms of the board, the wide board. It was the opposite of the draft before. Like I had scouted kind of pretty widely in the first round, but that left us really blind in the later rounds of the draft.
Mm.
Um, so I felt pretty good about how the first round would shake out, and it was there weren't too many surprises for what I thought would happen. But this year it was like, okay, we like Reddick, Livingston, and Dan Johns, and that's about our whole list. And there's a couple of guys that I think are good that we'll pivot to if we need to, but normally I would prefer to like kind of see how the board falls and kind of react and trade if we need to. But because of having such a short list of guys we were targeting, I was like, actually, we're gonna try to negotiate a trade up before the draft.
Mm-hmm.
And if the guy's on the board, we're gonna just snap up and move and take him and not risk him falling anymore, which is then what ended up happening. We had a talked to a few teams. I think those ended up being the Bills that we had an agreement in place with. Um, and we were like, all right, Reddick's on the board. Let's go get him. We're not gonna let him get taken from us because we don't really have any backups we feel confident in, which was good apparently because Baltimore was thinking about trading up for him too, like after that pick, I think. The other funny thing that the other Dan Johns obviously was on the board, and the funny part is that we were thinking about taking him, and I think we were like picking before their big trade where they got Mitchell Reynolds and Dan Johns at Titans. We were like a few picks after them, obviously because they made the playoffs for us. And so I had talked to the Colts about potentially trading up, I think like 1 or 2 spots ahead of them with their other first round pick they had there, because I knew that the Titans would probably want Dan Johns.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know they would pop off, trade multiple firsts for Mitchell Reynolds and a top 5 pick to take him. So I was right that they wanted him. I had no information. I just had a feeling that Dearden would want him, knowing what he's done with that rushing attack there. So, right idea. It ended up not mattering anyways because we moved up earlier to take Reddick. That was more like if Reddick wasn't on the board. Obviously, Dan Johns went way earlier than I thought he would, but I didn't know the rest of the class wasn't as good or that teams would be as excited about him as they would. So,
yeah.
At least I felt vindicated that the Titans. I was right that the Titans wanted him. And it was funny that the Colts ended up being the team that they traded for him too. You're talking about trading with them essentially to beat them.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. There's so much information and so much that teams know and don't know, or you don't realize that you don't know until someone says something. It's chaotic and heart pounding, but it's what makes it fun too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The funny thing too about the draft, like with Joseph Reddick, I'm very happy we got him. I think he's going to be a great player. I see him as the successor to Benedict Luna. Maybe he won't quite get as high up depending on his potential, but my scouting process was a little bit unorganized, so I discovered him kind of probably the less efficient way where I was scouting the entire cornerback position and was like, oh my gosh, this guy's way better than the rest of them. And then later I was scouting the combine and I was like, oh, he had way better combine than every other corner. I probably could have gotten to that information a lot easier than spending a quarter of my scouting points. Which also tipped me off to be like, oh, other teams probably know about him though. Because when I first found him, he's like a B- in the book. I was like, dang, we got it. This is a great find. And I was like, okay, we probably need to look at moving up because I think teams are going to notice this guy. So we got the right answer, maybe not in the best way, but it turned out okay.
Yeah, hindsight's 2020.
When I was scouting the combine, I was like, oh my gosh, why did I not do this first?
Oh man. Well, any other predictions, hot takes, any other storylines you're watching in 2027 in either league as we get ready to finally kick off the games that matter?
Look at my list. Yeah, I think the other big storyline that I'm keeping an eye on is like there's a lot of like younger passers, like quarterbacks that are kind of in like, if I was running the team at least, kind of like borderline like make or break, like not like second year guys, but more like the Landrums, even Anku, although he's shown a little bit more promise than Landrum, but like those kind of level of guys that are like getting towards the end of their rookie deals that like. Even Asensio is kind of like showed a little bit, but they only gave him a 3-year extension. I think he's coming up this year or next for another one. Like, and these guys that are passers that haven't quite put it together that should be starting to develop, can they actually make it work? Landrum is the one I've definitely got my eye on, and even Knable too, to a certain extent. He's performed better. He's able to like forget times. But then also Houston brings in Aaron Poole to be his backup, I think.
Yeah.
Or maybe a running back. They paid him a lot to be a running back. I don't fully know the plan, and they gave him a lot of guaranteed money to immediately be trade bait in season 1. But I guess also maybe the reason was because they stole him from Denver, which made Denver blow it up, and they have Denver's first. That's a little bit of a conflict for me to get there. So, but yeah, like Knable, Landrum, especially, even you guys with Inku, to see if they can kind of like take that next step to be like, okay, they like have earned the second contract.
Yeah.
You got Seattle's guy, forget his name, but
Allard.
Seattle's quarterback. Yeah, Kamoko Allard. He got extended,
Mm-hmm.
but hasn't started yet. They've supposedly had an over the ratings. I think he was on the trade block. I don't know what's going on. They didn't like post it, but like on the interface, he was like listed on the block. I don't think they're actually going to trade him, but yeah, guys like that are like not the elite guys right now, not the rookie second year guys, but kind of in the middle that are all vying to be the next Dakota Link, the next Dean Hammonds. Like who's going to step up and be that in
Yeah.
the league? We don't really have anyone that's been a clear cut favorite besides Scott Romero, who's been my favorite young passer to follow so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Travis Neebels had flashes. He's had some like really good games, um, but yeah, still throws a lot of picks, fumbles. Still not quite as consistent.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, if I said last week if he can turn those flashes into more consistent play, I think he can. He would definitely be a candidate. But also of course with higher overall also comes higher value expectations when it is time to finally pay up. So the pressure is really
Mhm.
on. Although he and Landrum have potentially the teams had that fifth year, which the Browns unfortunately do not. We're gonna have to make up our minds next year, one way or the other. Um, but again, for what it might cost, for because even if you're not making Pro Bowls, the QB cost for if you want to do the 1 year deal is really high, especially fully guaranteed.
Mhm.
So it's not, you know, even saying, oh, they have a fifth year option. I'm like, even that's not the easiest decision because it's a lot to put into 1 year if you're not sold on the guy
Yeah. Not to throw Cynic under the bus one more time, but like,
yet.
I think teams are going to have look at him and be like, just because a guy's high over, like if a guy has been playing, do we just extend him just because of that overall number, that rating number? And I think he's an example of that. I'm hopeful for this season for him. I think he's even better. Obviously, he keeps progressing, and now they got a good wide receiver, which I think is
Yeah.
a key thing to making quarterback work. But like, yeah, I think there's going to be more good quarterbacks in the future drafts. There's guys like that were traded or free agents this year that like if I think that'll keep happening. Like there'll be solid options. So now
Mm-hmm.
it's up to the point like, do you just pay a guy because he's good, or is teams actually going to start to have to prioritize like actual production? I think
Mm-hmm.
we're starting to get to that point in the sim as we get more and more talent as the overall level increases. That like eventually there's going to be too many good players, where you're not going to just pick the highest overall number. You have to pick the one that actually plays well
Yeah.
because there's going to be enough options that hey, if this 80 overall quarterback doesn't work, there's another one I can trade for or sign like that
Mm-hmm.
has actually played well. So we're going to go get that guy instead. I
Yeah.
think we're like heading in that direction. So I think that's what's going to be a really interesting decision for teams that are in that place right now, especially
Yeah.
looking at like yeah how Cynic's performed and um, even West. I think he's a little
Mm-hmm.
older, but like he got paid in free agency by the Seahawks and it just didn't work out. Like he had everything on paper that they had everything on paper. Like should have been a playoff team, should have had a good offense, and they just couldn't make it work. Which I'm not. I don't think the guys running the team were messing up poorly. I think it just like
Mm-hmm.
the quarterback just wasn't able to perform, even though he's got the talent.
Yeah.
So that's I think something really interesting to look at.
I'm curious who in the sim is going to end up being sort of our version of like Gardner Minshew, who's like good enough to be on teams and then is going to make their career by just like, coming in relief of higher paid, more exciting prospects and doing just enough to like bump them off their starting job. Um, you know, because
Yeah, I think. Oh, sorry. What you finishing your thought?
oh, it's just because to your point, I think some of these overalls is going to be a point where they're good enough to just stay around, even if teams say, well, I don't think this is our quarterback of the future, but he's good enough to roster, and yeah, if our starter isn't playing well, he's good enough to play.
I think the lesson. I think we saw a microcosm of it last year, and I think it might be a lesson more teams take. Maybe not this year, but looking ahead, where like you look at Matt Howard, where like he's a pocket quarterback, he should be able to sling it, but the Jags turned it over to Rivera, this field general, who's like, okay, he just they had so much talent, so he just kept it safe. And so I think a lot of teams that have these big arm pocket QBs might end up having like solid, like Gardner Minshew might be like the field general quarterbacks that are there that teams can put in because hey, like this guy's not going to throw 30 interceptions. He's going to complete 60 to 70% of the his passes, and like or he might not throw 7,000 yards like Philip Avila, but like or there might be teams where they don't need that and they turn to the more solid option, even if there's a bigger, higher overall number, higher throw power, throw accuracy, at least ratings on another guy. For that field general like Gardner Minshew, like James Rivera, that um, might not be flashy, but like actually gets some wins.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, facial hair is pretty flashy, but maybe not to play on the field.
Yeah, that's yeah, that's a good point. I don't know if James Rivera's got a mustache like that.
I don't know. I'll have to check the player
But
card. That's where the real data can be found.
yeah, he's like also like the opposite because Minshew's like this. I mean, he's a little bit getting a little bit up there now, but like for a while he was kind of like the young gunner on the bench versus Rivera's like the old veteran that like is like all right, he's more like a Joe Flacco, I guess, in real life.
Mm.
Like steps in like, hey, I'll take over and keep the ship on course at least, even if I'm not gonna, you know, be a game changer completely. But yeah,
Yeah,
that is interesting.
Joe Flacco. That's an apt comparison, especially with his ties to the AFC North.
Mm-hmm. Didn't get traded between AFC North teams,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for your time, man. Appreciate it. It's been great to catch up with you again. Thanks for coming on the show, coming back, talking with me. Um, you know, best of luck, as much impartial luck as I can wish upon you as a commissioner. Um, um, you know, good luck, and excited to see what the Chiefs can do in the coming year.
Thanks, man. Happy to be back, even as a disembodied voice, and we will save all of that luck for our Week 15 game.
Sounds
That's
like
we play the Browns if you didn't know
I,
in Week
I
15.
I had a feeling. I didn't remember exactly, but I made the schedule. I was like, oh, yep, we're playing them.
Prime time should be fun.
Oh, it's prime time?
It's Monday night.
Hell yes. I'm excited. I mean, you probably wipe the floor with us if you haven't clinched already, but
We'll be coming off a road game against the Chargers, so
ooh,
we might be a little bit battered from that. We'll see.
okay.
Because yeah, our schedule we went from playing a I think last place or like at least third
Hmm.
place schedule last year where like the which I figured going into it, the first half of our schedule was mostly non-playoff teams,
Mm-hmm.
technically the Titans, but like talent-wise, we had clear advantage over them. But then the second half was like all of the AFC West games
Yeah.
and like the Rams and the Seahawks and the Jets. Versus this season, like it's not all hard games, but we were playing the NFC East and the AFC East, I think.
Ooh.
So we have the Cowboys, the Commanders, the Dolphins, the Jets, on top of playing having to play the Chargers twice. So yeah, the Eagles they're I think they'll be pretty decent too. So yeah, it will not be as I know we don't really do strength of schedule metrics, but if we did, I think ours is definitely taking a step up from last year.
Mm-hmm.
But we should get two for easy wins against Denver, is what I'll say.
I like it. All right. Well, thanks again, sir, for stopping by. Always great to talk with you. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And as I always say to all our users and all of our Sims, good luck and have fun. See you guys.
Peace.